kilobytes per second that need to be. Ah, there we go. Okay, nope. It is. What's going on? I think it must be something to do. I think it must be something to do to the weather, to be honest.
Possibly, yeah.
Because I've got such bad weather over here, sort of thing. Like it's, I reckon.
Yeah, it's weird. We've had it's been like gloomy, but it's not been raining or anything.
Yeah. No, it's a real shame, honestly. Ah, okay. So it looks like we're back up again. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and humanoids of all ages, and welcome back to Take 2. Hopefully the stream does a little bit better, which it's currently still not exactly happy, but I don't think there's much more I can do, unfortunately, I'm afraid. Please work, computer. You know I love you. I love you so much. You could just work for me for once. You know, just. So if I move away from my laptop, it seems to be working better. So I'm just gonna be leaning over here, guys. It's cool. It's all good. But yeah. So jumping back into what we were talking about. Anyway. So.
Yeah, it's all working again.
Somewhat. It'll work enough.
Cool. Okay.
as long as it works somewhat, we can do something with it anyway. But jumping back in, you've finished uni now, and
both my third year professional project, which is a group project where we all work together in a group to create one game for a client, and my fourth year honors project, which is a solo project, technical experience, usually something that's cutting edge or quite interesting. And both of those were done for VR, specifically the HTC Vive.
Yeah.
And both of them are very different. So the group project, I took the VR quite early on as one of those sort of, we call it early adapters, or early adopters, and it's actually a friend of mine. He is now the CEO of VR to like order a Vive. He had it back in, God, it must be March or April when it first came out, which is because they're shipping out slowly.
Yeah, they are. They're very slow.
Well, no, it's when they first released, they sort of staggered the release, so like you get them a lot later. So I went over to his house, and I wasn't 100% sold on it, physically sort of putting the headset on, and just I was sold instantly. Like if you've never tried VR, it's very hard to describe how different it is to how it looks on the screen. It's just I didn't know how like cool it would be with like all the things you could do that you couldn't do before, and there are a lot of stuff. But I think a lot of the people, there's like fanatics and there's like people who are a bit more realistic about it. Yeah. I don't think it's going to replace him of playing games. I think it's going to be like anything else where it's a different medium of playing games, but it's a new one and it's a very cool one. We're not quite there with it yet. I think every iteration is going to bring something new to the table and be an improvement, like any bit of technology.
100%.
We're still in this is the second wave of VR.
Yeah.
There was the first one in the 90s. There's been VR around.
Yeah.
Since the 60s. It was very primitive, but it was.
There you go. It's back on now. Okay.
As I was saying, there was a VR arms race in the 90s where a lot of the big games makers at the time, like Sega and Nintendo and everyone, they all wanted to be like the first to have this big successful thing, and magazines were declaring it like, this is it, this is like VR's happening in a couple years time, everything will be VR.
Wow.
And everyone cancelled their headset, at least for a commercial release, except Nintendo. They all sort of couldn't get the technology right. Sega did a few in arcades, and loads of independent manufacturers made arcade-based ones because that was the only medium that they could physically do it.
Yeah, because
Nintendo were the only people. Yeah, well, Nintendo were the only people. Yeah, well, just the sheer sort of like technological kind of cost and size as well sometimes. Like numbers, like a console. Some people were expecting to sell like a PlayStation or something, but it's still very much a specialist thing. It's expensive, very expensive.
And you got a big size. You got a big room which you got clear out.
It's expensive both in money, space, and time. Sometimes like people were complaining it wasn't really plug in and go. There's a lot of setup, which isn't always great. Like sometimes you got to move stuff out the way every time you want to play things.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's a very interesting field, and it's going to keep on getting better and better as the years go on.
Well, you were talking about like the best thing that they can do is Bluetooth it. So once the wires have been
they have.
cut away.
So that's adapter for the current headset. Okay. And the next one will be releasing completely untethered. And I feel like most headsets will also be going in a similar direction.
It makes sense.
The wires were holding it back a bit. It's your one sort of tether to the real world still there. Once that's gone, you're sort of a lot more free. So I'm interested to try that iteration of VR because it'll be quite a different experience, I think.
And a lot of shops have taken as well. Like a lot of like Game Shop has started to you can go into the game shops and you can play it there sort of thing now as well, which is really interesting.
I think they were doing that quite a bit in 2016 and 17. I think less so nowadays. It sort of died down the hype, but I think sales are continuing and sort of steady-ish. Yeah. But it's sort of not as big of a public phenomenon.
Like I think the more people that are going to slowly buy into it, and it'd be one of those like rolling snowballs effect. Like you've got it, so you go to your friend's house and you want it eventually, sort of thing. And the prices go down gradually, and it becomes more affordable.
Yeah, no, all the headsets are becoming cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah. Oh, they were so expensive. It's like, that's a bit steeper. Now it's great, and also there's becoming more of a market for second-hand ones as well. So people who can't afford buying brand new, like CX and shop like that, are starting to sell them as well, sort of thing, which is quite good.
Yeah, no, like yeah, there's a lot of people that like played it a bit and didn't decide it was for them, and then sort of hanging. So yeah, they're a lot more available now than they were.
Yeah. Okay then. So going back a bit, what's coding like for Is coding for VR different?
All the two biggest engines for game development right now are Unity and Unreal 4, and they both have very easy. So you can quite easily integrate VR to your projects that you're working on. It's not too difficult, and from there, it's just using it like any other input.
Yeah.
However, it's the design that really is the big difference thinking about games for VR, because you've got a lot more limitations than you would usually do. You can't, like, you got to think about physicality and you can't just sort of sprint somewhere. You got to think about locomotion and sort of if you were jumping, you can't just sort of blast the character up without some contextual reason why you'd be physically jump in the air. So there's a lot of stuff.
It becomes a bit more bound into the real world in the sense you have to look at real with characteristics.
You've got to think about people, and is make you feel ill. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable. The more the experience simulates real life, you are going to have a much better time. The game's going to be a lot more fun.
Sorry to cut off there. That's very interesting because that feeds into what I do as well. Because as a massage therapist, we want them to be as comfortable as possible for them to have the best experience. It's really interesting to see the correlation there again. Like how it all feeds into the best experience. So sorry, I just like I heard you say that's going now sort of thing, which are if you buy one of their games, it's game, but it's due to the size of the staff because the games have to be such high quality. They have to get
a lot more defined. So indie games were a couple of guys in a basement, sort of doing something without a publisher. These days, most indie companies do more about the sort of the style of development. So indie games are very much, you throw a large body of people at a problem, you have very many divisions, and you spend a lot on marketing. You've got a lot of force behind you. It's mostly a money thing overall. Yeah. And like my sort of thing is, do you have a marketing department? And like that's pretty much you're no longer. It's fine having a social media guy or something, but I'd boil it down. I don't know much about AA. That's sort of a very new concept. It's these sort of bigger indie devs that have a lot of pushing power. I'm familiar with three sort of most different forms of game development. Are very much say student projects / sort of like personal projects, indie dev, and AAA development.
Yeah.
So, student projects, I'm actually part of one of those as well. You can sort of see the logo on the screen. They're box races, but something. It's very fulfilling. It's often not very profitable. It almost will always make a loss if you try and release it, because you've not really put any money into it, so you don't get much out. Yeah. But it's mostly just an experience thing, and it can be very, very fun. And some of them worked into something really fun and interesting. And so people do those all the time. A lot of people do student projects like that, and just personal ones as a side thing from their like desk job. From people just out of university, they sit down, they want to form a studio. They get is good production, good organization. It is just essential. Probably it's all being done well. It's all being sort of done connected. Everything's being thought of. Everything's being sort of like
everything's being timed and everything's being.
And production is one of those things that sort of you think about it as a new studio or as a new dev. Sort of a second thought, like I'll get someone to do that at some point, or I can just do it myself. But your job is going to take.
Yeah,
that's really important. I think that's one of the main things that makes indie dev success. It happens all the time, but never to this scale. Games can be as successful or
open world games sort of thing, because you get all these people who put their hearts into
maintenance, constant running, constant events. It's like round the clock staffing and round the clock development.
Yeah,
and that's why a lot of the master subscription models companies have a bit of a different tactic. Someone like Rockstar, of course, which is a hot topic right now.
GTA 5,
Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out.
Yes, it looks so good. It looks so good this time.
So what their method is very large scale productions, very long development cycle. And how they do it is a lot of the time they just get their staff to work insane hours. For 2018, I believe the hourly they're done through a lot of pain and suffering.
Of course, there's
a lot of the time.
It's so much hard work put into it, which people don't see. Which is sort of the reasons why I want to bring you on, because you're beginning to behind the scenes part.
Important issue to me, because that could be me having to work. Like you wouldn't see your family or friends at all.
Of course.
You'd be very much. It's called like a crunch, but Rockstar, you could barely call it a crunch. It's often for very long periods of time.
It's a long crunch. It's a very long crunch.
Usually at the end of a development cycle, for the last kind of month or so, or last few weeks, you have to sort of work extra hard to try to finish it all up and get it out the door and go gold, which is the concept of finishing the game. They're like pretty much like forced into it.
That's such a brutal way, isn't it? Because it's
such an industry standard that people don't even question it at this point. Luckily, a lot of people are having talks of like fighting, pushing back on it. A lot of companies are saying that they'll only do it as like a last resort. And so it's getting better, but a lot of companies still.
I totally agree with that. That's such a wonderful way. You right?
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
reason why the game's failing, and it's like, well, this is literally decisions you made.
Yeah.
So a lot of the older companies are like that. They'll make these bad decisions. They'll do a lot of awful stuff, and they'll. Yeah. But luckily, the games industry is improving. It's slow. It's slower than most industries, but it's improving slowly.
Yeah. But it's a relatively like in the scale of things, it's a relatively new industry in the sense it's like for video games.
Yeah, video games have been around as an industry since the.
But what
years, will be making about double my salary. For a graduate making money. Like a lot of people saying, it's 5 years. You've pretty much got 5 years in the industry. Because 5 years in, you're sitting there.
Yeah.
You've got 5 years experience, and you're still working the same job. You're still a programmer for a bank.
Wow.
So a lot of people will say, I'd like to have positions. People leave after a while because it's just not well paid enough.
Yeah.
And like
changing as well in the industry as well. Right. Fuck. No, like I first moved to Bristol about 6 years ago, and I didn't know much about Steam. I think you might have introduced me to Steam. It's like it's the whole mass media effect now. Like you know, stood around you to hide you from it all, sort of thing. So it's harder for you to poke your head out to go, hi.
Get noticed. It's hard to kind of get your game out there, but the people that do also
100%.
stand out.
You've been in the industry. You've been working in the industry for the last couple of months now. Like how like as
but they're not like got that kind of legacy sort of awfulness from like the older studios.
Yeah, nice.
And so like I get on with everyone. I have a really nice time working there, and it's all everything I'm gonna do I enjoy. Sometimes that's sort of some of the fun of it is solving hard problems. And so I'm still very, very passionate about the industry, and I'm still doing a lot outside university. I got was the big European.
Yeah,
country.
EGX is so cool.
Massive. It's really cool. Be better at doing stuff.
Some nice food, have a nice time, and then jump back into it because you just burn out the brain, and they'll just miss problems, exactly. And they'll be doing stuff, and they'll just go it goes by.
There's a development where like solo projects and research stuff. It's quite hard to do when you're doing team stuff. Like game development is a lot. Yeah.
That's really cool. And how about yourself? Like, when do you find yourself to be?
It's pretty good. I think it's not. I think because when you write early in the morning, you're doing some of your worst work. But so I've always done some of my best work in the evening. This work is done in evening times.
Yeah, I totally get that. And last question is, do you yourself? You guess you sort of already answered this, but do you see yourself working in the games industry?
I don't know what a foot in the door, and I'm able to do that. So I think my options are opening up, and they're pretty available. So it's nice to see that, and I think I'm going to try and stay in it.
Nice. No, I'm really glad as well, and I will.